I was trafficked when I was younger. And then once I got out and I got some services, I was like, you know what? That was a gift for me to get out. And I feel a responsibility to go back and make sure that nobody else has to experience this.
Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forged Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in The Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Fire Forged Leader podcast. Today, we have an amazing person by the name of Kristen Vaughn on. If you haven't heard her story yet, you're going to hear a different version of it today. You know, we've been talking in the background, and Kristen has an amazing story, but the things that she's done since then are also amazing too. So you're going to get both sides of that story. And she really fits well into the series that we're building here around this human exploitation and trafficking dilemma that's really plaguing this country and plaguing the whole world. So welcome, Kristen. It's a pleasure to have you here today. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like you just to kind of briefly tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing nowadays, and then we'll get into your story a little bit.
Sure. Well, nice to meet everyone. Thank you, Steve, so much for having me on. This is a wonderful opportunity. I appreciate the people in this space that are willing to let survivors speak and to let us share our truth and just to let us be us and to let us share what we're doing now. So again, my name is Kristen Vaughn. If you don't know me, I am from Southwest Virginia, and I still live in Southwest Virginia. I was trafficked when I was younger. And then once I got out and I got some services, I was like, you know what? That was a gift for me to get out. And I feel a responsibility to go back and make sure that nobody else has to experience this. So I became a grant writer and started doing that and have just moved throughout this sector in this space since 2008. I've worked for a lot of really cool people. I've met a lot of amazing survivors and allies and organizations. I'd go to a lot of conferences and get to really just interact and engage with the people that are in this community. And it's really, 5-10 years ago, we felt like we were screaming at a wall. We felt like that nobody was listening to us. We felt like that we were silenced, just like we were when we were trafficked and nobody cared. That has really, really started to change in, I would say, the past 2 to 3 years. And it's really exciting. We have a long way to go, but there are a lot of policy, legislation, people's minds, people's hearts, people's opinions. People are excited about wanting to help survivors. And that makes me excited. And it's really just starting to become, people have often called this a movement. A dear friend of mine calls it a sector because she says that a movement is led by the people that it affects, that the situation affects. We're almost there. We're on boards, we're on board of directors. We're open organizations. We're, getting our masters and we're doing counseling and we're, doing fundraising and we're starting to really lead this movement. And so it's really exciting to see people that are, like you, Steve, they just want to help. They just want to say, hey, this is something that we need to focus on. This is something that, because typically in the past, it's been like the only help that we could get were people that had organizations and, we were speaking to raise money for their organization or we were doing things for them. And now it's really the tide is starting to turn. And while we're grateful for all those people that got us to where we are, it's very empowering to be able to feel like we have some ownership over this, sector and we're starting to really make a difference. So, that's, I'm still on several boards. I'm part of, a lot of organizations. I mean, people can look me up on LinkedIn. I don't have to give you my whole bio here, but I'm really engaged with the survivor community, on all sides of it. There's so many different niche sectors within the sector. And it's really been a wonderful opportunity to be able to start networking with people and to be able to, try to be a bridge builder. That's my goal, is to be a bridge builder between the people that are, for in demand and the people that are for sex workers' rights. They're both right, they're exploitation, but we still have to respect everybody's, choice in life. And so, or bridging building the bridge between law enforcement and people that are, not for law enforcement, building the bridge between faith-based organizations and organizations that are not faith-based. At the end of the day, we all have the same goal. We're all here for the same reason. And so I really, that's really my goal. And currently right now, so I'm a volunteer for We Fight Monsters, which is an organization in Memphis that's doing incredible work. And for any of your listeners, just wefightmonsters.org. Look us up. We have quite a few things going on, but the thing that I'm really focused on, that I'm really, there for, is Sparrow House. Sparrow House is a new house that we've leased for trafficking survivors and their children, their small children. It's a sober living house. And it's very unique because it's very, very hard. There's so many things involved with having a house with children, whether it be from insurance to guidelines to rules to ages. There's a lot involved. But we had a child sex trafficking victim who had an infant, and the infant was abused, and we knew that she could not go back to that house. So when the infant was released from the hospital, we moved her into a now Sparrow House. So we've got a 4-month-old baby changing the world. She didn't even know it yet. And we keep saying that we can't wait to tell her about it. So that's sort of me in a nutshell, I guess.
No, that's awesome. Awesome. So you mentioned in all that you were trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
And that was going up on 2 decades ago already.
Yeah.
So
now I feel old. Thank you.
What's that?
I said, now I feel old. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I was just looking at the years, and
Mm-hmm.
every time that I talk to someone in this space, I realize how blind we've been for how long, right? So that's why I referenced it in 2 decades. So going back to that timeline, can you kind of tell us about a little bit about your upbringing, how you grew up, and then just kind of walk into how you got
there.
You got trapped into it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I grew up in a wonderful family. My mother was a teacher. My dad worked for the phone company. I had a little brother. He was 3 years younger than me. We grew up with every opportunity you could think of. Every experience. I grew up very privileged, and I'm fully aware of that. And I'm very cognizant of that fact. Since my mom was a teacher, she was home during the summer. So we had, somebody there with us. She was very, very involved in our lives. My dad was very, very involved in our lives. He, coached our sports teams, and, we were very, very involved in our church. There was no sort of, a lot of stories. And this is, for a long time, I felt like I didn't have a story, because I would hear stories of other women that were, very much abused, very much neglected, very much, grew up in poverty, and I would just be like, wow, who am I to share my story? Because what I, my childhood was amazing. It just was. Were there, it's just like any kid, there was some, back and forth with the parents, I got a little rebellious.
Oh,
yeah. When in my teenage years, as one does, but it was nothing. It was just normal kind of stuff. So a lot of people, when I used to, right when I first kind of got out of it, people, when I would go, went to therapy and doctors, and they would be like, well, what is, the history? Like they would be like, well, what happened to get you to this point? And so the only thing that I can honestly say was, for me personally, it was mental health. So I was diagnosed ADHD at 10 or 12. And then it just sort of progressed from there. And I was in and out of a couple of mental health facilities, growing up. And it was just, it was that combined with, I graduated high school when I was 17. I was on June 8th. On June 16th, I moved into my college. I found the college furthest away from home that was still in-state tuition, and it was in Northern Virginia. And I was not ready. I was not ready at all. And I did really good for the summer session. There was very few people there. It's a very smaller kind of class, because it was so I started summer school. Growing up, I'd been an athlete. I played soccer, volleyball, swim team. Did lots of like public speaking, and they used to call them like forensics teams, like speech and debate. I did, I was involved in everything. And so, but about, 16, 17, the mental health kind of kicked in, substance abuse kicked in. And it was all very well hidden, for a while, but it was not really to my family, but it was all very well hidden to everyone else. And people just couldn't even believe that I was doing, what I was doing. And so the mental health led directly into substance abuse, which in Southwest Virginia, so Purdue Pharma flooded this area with Oxys, with Oxycontin. And that was like 95 to 2000. And it was, and everybody was, I was like 15 years old doing Oxycontin and mental health and trying to navigate, doing, being involved in everything, going to church high, going to, school high, and finally, I got off the Oxys, went to college, and about, 2 months into college, which, let me tell you this though, this is another important part. My dream for my whole life was to be an attorney. I wanted to go to law school. So my major was political science with an emphasis on political theory. And I love the law, and I love the legalese of it, and the way that it just, wraps itself around in my brain, and it just makes sense. And I loved it. And that was my life's goal. My whole life, I just always wanted to be an attorney. So, when I started college early, about 2.5 months in, I was sexually assaulted. And things just went downhill from there. I ended up becoming pregnant, and the pregnancy was terminated. And after that, it was just, I stopped going to class. I stopped taking a shower. I stopped eating. All that I was doing was just getting high, and I just could not function. And so I had to, my parents came and got me. I went home. I went to a treatment center, and it got really, really involved in Narcotics Anonymous, and really was doing really well. So I moved to a new city in Southwest Virginia, which is where I'm from, is really small. So this was not a big city, but to me it was a big city. And I was doing a culinary program at a major 5-star restaurant hotel. But I used to have to walk to the bus stop, or I would walk to work. I didn't know anybody there. I was coming out of, a drug addiction. I was coming out of, the whole sexual assault thing. I was coming out of feeling like complete failure because I, couldn't go to school. And I was just, I was at rock bottom. I was clean at that point, but I was just, like a walking zombie. And so one day these girls started talking to me, and they were like, I think one of them bummed a cigarette off of me or something. And they apparently, I guess they lived near where I lived, and they would see me walking to the bus stop, and they would be like, hey, what's up? And so then it just kind of progressed from there. They ended up, again, I'm basically estranged from my family. I don't have any friends there. I'm in a major, non-medicated depression, non-medicated ADHD, throw in some bipolar, I'm sure. And I was starving for attention, for love, for, and they saw me coming. they knew exactly what they were doing. And it was very much a love bombing situation that I compared to what you see in cults. So they would do little things, like it started like we would, they would like, that would be getting off the bus and coming home from work, and they would be like, oh, hey. And we ended up started hanging out, and I ended up started smoking weed with them again. And they would come over. It was just these three girls. It was one older, one my age, and one younger. And they became my best friends. And we would go to the store just to, get food or something, and they would pay for my food. We would go to the mall, and I would pick out stuff, and, I would go to pay for it, and they would just pay for it. And then they started I started getting more and more into drugs. I lost my job. They started paying my rent. They started paying my electric. They became my family. They became my best friends. Next thing I know, they've got guys, coming over to my house, or I'm at one of their houses and there's guys coming over. And I really, honestly, I was so naive. I had no clue what they were doing, but they would be like, we would see a car. We'd walk to the store, and we would see a car, and they would be like, hey, I'll be right back. Wait here for me. They would hop in the car. They would be gone for a couple hours. They would come back and have a bunch of money. And then it got to be where it was a bunch of dope. And so we, and it progressed from there. So it became, and eventually one day, one of the girls was, not to get into it really, but just introduced me to what they were doing. And I was like, sure, why not? Why not get paid for it? And that was like the very initial part of it. But it very, very, very quickly became like, whoa, what am I doing? But it was almost too late. I was, like I said, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a car. I was getting ready to lose my house. And then they were like, oh, you can move into our house. So I did. And that was the House of Horrors. At the end of it, 2 years later, at the end of it, I was basically being held in a basement with three other girls. My dad had to actually come, literally, I think he had a baseball bat, come rescue me from the house. And the city this house is in, there was so much nefarious activity there, and so much was going on. The city has since razed that house to the ground. It no longer exists. It's an empty lot. And then, my dad got me out. They found out where I was. My dad got me out. They took me to a program in Nashville. I got myself together, and here I am.
Wow. I was taking notes as you were talking, and I filled up a whole page.
Earlier, you were just like, I just have these three things.
So your story is very similar to most, right?
Yeah, it is.
Excuse me.
No, I just said it is.
So there's mental health, right? Mm-hmm. There's self-medicating, and a lot of similar stories to a lot of other survivors.
Absolutely.
Right? Something that I really want to pull out of there, though, for the audience, is that you stated you came from a good home. Mm-hmm. You had two good parents, working class people.
Yep.
You went to church, and you still ended up in this situation.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I think that's very important for people to know, right? Because this doesn't affect, people who are, only homeless, right? Or only drug addicted parents or whatever. It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we went through that, and, you could shed some light on that. But I also want to pull out that the common denominators, though, is that there were things that were going on with you that, I'm not going to reveal your age, but we're pretty close. But back in that time period, there wasn't a lot of safety nets for what you're talking about.
Oh no, there were none. I mean, I had to get on a waiting list. It was a 2-year waiting list. I went to jail in and out of those 2-year period, and I wrote to this organization in Nashville, and there was a 2-year waiting list, and they because but they kind of evaluate you like, you don't have to necessarily wait 2 years, but that's the general. They evaluated me and they were like, okay, we think you're ready. But I had to go to Nashville. There's nothing here. All that's in was where I was at. And not even just here, but like in America, because trafficking was not a word back then. That trafficking back then was drug trafficking. There was no human trafficking. There was nobody was talking about it. Now there were organizations like I know Freedom Network and Polaris have been around, but they were kind of like in their infancy. And this the general public like just like all they saw like the movie Pretty Woman or they saw the movie Taken, and that was their version of of trafficking. But they don't even it wasn't a word. There were no services. It was and people and like, oh gosh, and don't even tell anybody that that's what happened to you back then, because they will, like I told you earlier, they just look at you like you have a moral deficiency, like there's something wrong with you, like you made this choice, you put yourself there. What are you upset about now? You did this to yourself. There was no sort of compassion. I mean, there was nothing. And so I was very fortunate to find the organization that I did and be able to receive services as early as I did, because there's a lot of people that didn't. And that's like one of the things that we really are fighting for now is, funding for organizations, funding from the government, funding from private donors to support organizations that are doing that work now, because nobody's really doing it except like all of like private citizens, it's still such a, the stereotype around it, and the way that people, a lot of times I don't even introduce myself as a survivor when I speak. What I'll do is I'll start speaking because I do have the experience since 2008. I do have educational background. I do have the training. I do have all of that. That being a survivor does not define me. Is it because do I do the work now because I'm a survivor? Probably. Would I be here if I wasn't? Maybe. But am I here? Am I here? So what I'll do is like when I'll speak, I'll wait till halfway through and then hit it with I'm a survivor. And then people are like, oh, like, when I was at that organization, people used to think I was the intern. Like nobody thought that I was like a resident or a client. People just don't. And so it's really the way that people look at us, or when I say us, I say survivors and victims, is starting to change. But to be able to provide services, to be able to have services nationally, like it's still so. I mean, there's the need is so much greater than what we can even touch right now. And so again, that's starting to change, but it's better than it was better than it was in 2005. But still, like you said, in almost 20 years, I didn't even think about it. It's almost 2 decades. Yeah. And you would think that in that 2 decades that we would have learned some lessons, and we would have, as a country, as a society, as a church, as a group, been able to really shine a light on this. And, people want to talk about awareness, but why aren't we talking about prevention? Why aren't we talking about aftercare? Like it's 2023. If you're not aware of trafficking at this point, I'm not sure what you're doing with your life. Like it's happening. Now, what can we do to prevent it? What can we do to take care of those survivors afterwards? That's really like the focus of my work that I do now.
And we're going to get into that in a second. I do have a couple other questions about your story here, if you don't mind.
So sure.
So going back a step, though, the systems in place, right? Back then, there was also not systems in place or really good systems in place for mental health, drug treatment, different things like that. And something as I'm sitting here talking to you that I'm starting to realize is, there's a missing component in here. I went to rehab, I want to say 4 times.
I'm right. Yeah, we won't talk. I don't have enough fingers, but yeah.
But I don't know if any of them really got to the real root cause, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I kind of digress there, but the similarities that I see are really around these unaddressed problems. It's not about having poor parenting or things like that. Mm-hmm. It's about normal issues that people have that go unaddressed that lead into something bigger.
Yeah.
Would you
And
agree with that?
it's like a snowball. And once that snowball gets going, and then it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And if there's nobody to stop that snowball, if there's nobody to intervene, if there's nobody to say, hey, wait a minute, what happened? Like, what can we do to help you? And there's nobody to come in with like some wraparound services, then that snowball is just going to keep going and going. It's going to be an avalanche and then crash. And a lot of the services. So back then it was just like, basically all there was for any sort of like drug addiction, mental health was go into treatment, go to a hospital, a state hospital, a private hospital for 5 to 10 days, and then you're out, and then here, go to some meetings. Good luck, and that was it. And that's it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It may have worked for some people, but I'm one of those people that I have to learn everything about trial by fire, and beating my head against the wall, and and I just do. But those lessons learned impact me greatly once I do learn them. So, but it took a whole community of people, from the organization I was in, to my family, to my church, to people that I was friends with, outside of that, people in the rooms, people, my sponsors. Like it took a whole community to really love on me and to really just jerk me out of that. My mom says I had to be surgically removed from it. Like I literally, like they came in, got me, pulled me out, and then they took me to Nashville. They dropped me off, and they were like, do this or don't come home. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll do it. I'll do anything. Because this is probably, I don't know, 10, 12, 13th time. And I did it. And but it's a very unique model. It's a housing first model, which is something we really need to talk about with not just with survivors, but with mental health, with drug addiction. But the housing first model is definitely something that was the answer for me, because I knew that I had a home, I had a safe place to land. I didn't have to worry about paying rent, and I could focus on me. And that was what did it for me.
Okay, last question about that, and then I definitely want to focus in on all the awesome stuff that you're doing since. But another commonality that I've really, me, I'm really new into this world, so I'm.
You're getting you're definitely getting a crash course with this series this month. I'm excited. I really want to circle back and talk to you in November.
So we talked about it before. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm a Christian. All my listeners know, right?
Yep, absolutely. Amen.
So for me, this has been a total God thing, right?
Yep.
God wants me in this fight. I'm not sure the reason why yet, but maybe I'm just kind of dumb. Maybe it's for this series, but I think it's probably for something bigger. We'll find out as time goes, but We'll start off with the series. He's connecting me with amazing, amazing people.
Yeah, I'm super excited about your lineup. You got the heavy hitters.
Oh, for sure. But I don't know. I just learned how to say yes a while back, and this was definitely one of those times that I learned to say yes. But going back to the commonalities, generally what I hear is there's a man involved, right?
Oh, yeah.
A man that's driving things. When you talked about your story, you're talking about these women who basically picked you off. But was there a man in this situation?
There was, yeah. Actually, I left that out, and I wanted to circle back to that. I found out later. So when I ended up moving into that house, the guy that owned the house was that guy, and he had paid these girls. He saw me walking a few times, him and like his friends. They saw me walking to the bus, and they would try to do that, like, what is it? Holler out of your best friend's ride. That's TLC song. And and they would be like, "What's up, girl?" Whatever. And I was just like, not like, I had on my chef jacket. I was going to work. I was not even engaging. Like, I wouldn't even talk to him. And it was him. And so I found out later that he was giving them dope. He was the one giving them the money. Whenever we would go shopping, he would give them money to like take me shopping and stuff. And like they had very, very intentionally. And honestly, I don't blame those girls. I don't know their level of, willingness or involvement, but they were also in a situation where they were completely strung out. He was the dope man. It was very forced. The legal definition is force, fraud, or coercion. And that force, fraud, or coercion does not have to be money. It does not have to be. It can be drugs. It can be a place to stay at night. It can be you don't get your tail beat tonight. It can be it can be we won't mess with your family. It can be a lot of things. So it was very much I don't blame. And those girls and I ended up actually all four being really held. I don't. The word captive is a strong word, but I don't know how. I have a really hard time describing myself as a victim. I never felt like a victim, but I absolutely was. But it's hard for me. Like I can tell you right now, like those girls are victimized. They were held captive, but I was right there with them. So, but it's just kind of hard for me to say that. But yeah, absolutely. But there was a man involved. He owned the house, and he was a guy you wouldn't have even thought to see him. He had a normal day job. To see him, you would have no idea that that's what he did. He was like middle-aged white guy, had a nice home. You would never think it. And absolutely. And then there was also like the boyfriend type thing. I met a guy that I started dating, and that kind of led into the other stuff too. And after I was able to get out of it and look back, no, that was not your boyfriend. This is not your family. These people did not love you. They were exploiting you. They were making money off of you. They estranged you from your family. They brainwashed you. But you got to get out of that before you can know any of that. When you're in it, it's a whole different. I don't even know how to explain it. It's a whole different world. It's literally like being in like a cult. I feel it very much. Like I've never been in a cult, but I feel like it's very similar to being in a cult. And you do have a man that's kind of driving everything. Yeah.
And that's probably the third commonality that I see is that people don't see themselves as a victim. And I think it's also why the public has such a hard time with domestic trafficking is because it seems like it's personal choice. Mm-hmm. But being a drug addict myself, I understand that, maybe that first time. Maybe
once that thing clicks, once it clicks, like once that gene or that thing that clicks, it's very similar to drug addiction. It's very similar to sex addiction. There were a lot of people that I've worked with that had a sex addiction, and once that gets activated, in your brain, it's alcohol. Like it's you do what you got to do, and then once you combine that with poor mental health, with estrangement from your family, with being you combine all that, and it's just a recipe for disaster. And unless you have some serious hardcore people around you, which we're getting ready to talk about, that will pull you out of that, or that will provide services for you, you're probably not going to get out.
Agreed.
It's not. You can't just. You may wake up one day and decide that you say, "Hey, this is not for me. I want to get out," but it's not that simple. You cannot just walk away because you are a money-making machine for somebody, and they're not going to let you just walk away. I tried. You can't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you don't. And that's the point that you really realize something's wrong, right? It's
like, wait a minute. Like, why can't I call my family? Why can't I use the phone? Why do I have to stay in the basement? Why is the basement door locked? Why do we have to, why do I have to ask you when I want to take a shower? Why do I have to ask you when I want to go to the store? It used to not be like this. Why now that I want to leave? Why is it like this? And then you're like, oh crap, what have I got myself into? I want to get out. And it's again, unless you have somebody to literally pull you out, you may not get out.
So it really starts with this place where people find themselves in, where they have something that they feel like is wrong with themselves.
Yeah.
Low
Guilt,
self-worth, shame. Yep. People see that in them. I'm kind of curious, and you probably don't know the answer to this, but what did he see in you? Was it the, walking around with your head hung, or
yeah. I think I'd moved into a house. I lived in so actually the guy that I worked, one of the people that I worked for at this restaurant, rented me a house. It was like a 5-bedroom house. It was huge, and I was the only one that lived there. It was in a not great neighborhood. I didn't know that going into it. I just knew that it was cheap and I could afford it. So I moved in, and I think that he saw me, I was alone. He saw me going back and forth to work, so he knew that I was working, or that I would work maybe. I was cute when I was 22. I was, and I used to, I'm sure that had something to do with it. I'd wear my hair in pigtails, and I'm sure that definitely had something to do with it. And I'm very personable, and I engage people, and I talk to people, and I don't have a great radar, so it's better now. But back then, I had zero, like, if you talked to me and paid attention to me and wanted to be my friend, like, cool, let's do it. I didn't have that, like, wait a minute, why is this person taking an interest in me? I didn't have that. And I still to this day struggle with that. And I have some really good people around me that I will go to and be like, hey, what about this person? What about this person? What do you think this person's motives are? Why do you think this? And why do and there's, fortunately, I've got, a network around me that'll be like, stay away, or they'll be like, no, they're fine. So, but then I think that's what it was. It was just, I was alone, and I think that he just, he did, I guess, I don't know, because maybe I was very engaging and would talk to people. I'd go in the store, and if somebody talked to me, I'd or at the bus stop, or, whatever. And I think that he picked up on that and just sort of, just went from there.
Yeah. But he also seemed to know how to pick you off, right? Just like
I'm pretty sure he had done it to those girls. I'm pretty sure he had done it to those same girls, that it was just like a cycle, and it's like, and they, I was never asked to do that, but I was asked to, like, befriend other, like, different people, in doing the work that I did, and like be like, oh, this person is da da da. You need to go hang out with her. You need to go hang out with him. And there wasn't really like a motive given, but I'm sure there was a motive at some point. But yeah, I think it's just a revolving door.
I would imagine it was just to normalize it, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, and again, that's a good word. After you're in it for a while, it's very normal. It's a day-to-day thing. It's just and it seems so far away sitting here now, 22 years later, sitting here now talking about it seems so far away. When I talk about it, it doesn't even seem like me. I feel like I'm telling you a story about somebody else. It's very, I've disassociated very much from it, but it just feels so far away, because it's almost like when you tell people this stuff, I can understand how it's unbelievable to the public. I can understand how people see this stuff and are like, oh, well, that's not true, or that's not going on here, or that's only going on over there, or, where are you? Like, I can understand that, because it seems like a movie. Just even just thinking about it, it seems like, how in the world did I? And there was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of domestic violence. There was a lot of, weapons involved. There was a lot of threatening. There was a lot of, like, there's just a lot involved that, like, how did I even survive? And it doesn't even seem like I'm talking about me. So, wow. But I'm okay with it, because it's so far away, and that's why I do what I do now. And that's what I've been doing ever since. But it does definitely seem very far away, and like another person. But I can see how the public, and the general public, or regular people, can look at this issue and be like, nah, I get it. I get it.
At the same time, those same people, I get it too, because I was blind for a long period of time. And it's not my experience to share, but one of my daughters was very close, right?
Yeah, I listened to your podcast about that. That's scary. As a parent, I bet that was super scary.
For sure. And I think really this is my my time to take action, right? I didn't know what the hell to do at that point in time. But what I wanted to do was I had mugshot pictures, right? And I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah. But, yeah, my dad wanted to do the same thing.
Thank God my wife is such a voice of reason for me, right? So I never took that route. But so we find ourselves at the end of your story. Your dad has come to this house with a baseball bat, broke you free. You start this program. So let's pick up there. this program, you talked about it being a house first, and then, so tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's a housing first model, and it's called Thistle Farms. It's a 2-year residential program for trafficking survivors. They, as soon as you walk in, they provide mental health assessment, physical health, dental, vision, assessment, get you hooked up with access to resources. And then once they also have, so originally the residential part was called Magdalene. And then once you graduate Magdalene after 2 years, you could work at the Thistle Farms, which is a social enterprise. And they make bath and body products. And it's an amazing organization. If anybody is listening, ever gets to Nashville, go by there. It's on Charlotte Avenue. There's Thistle Stop Cafe. They have a manufacturing plant. We employ, I don't know now, maybe like 100 women, but it's a housing first model. Then they help you get into your own housing in some fashion, and you're working for them when you get paid a fair living wage. And so that's what I did. I was the event coordinator for a while. And so we would go to different places, tell our story, tell about Thistle Farms, and sell bath and body products. And that's what I did for a long time. And then I was like, you know what? There are some, I want to do this on a different scale. And I moved back home to Virginia to help take care of my grandfather. And then I ended up staying in Virginia. But it's really cool because graduates of the program, like my very best friend is a graduate of the program, and she's now the director of residential. She went back to school, got her master's degree. She's the director of residential. All of the key people there are graduates. So that is trickled out across America. They've got tons of sister organizations. But that was definitely the answer for me was the housing first, and then employment, economic stability, financial security for our future. And then that allowed me to then, as like a springboard for me to then move on from there.
Yeah, I can't imagine, if you're trying to break away from the life that you've been living in that model, right? And you try and break away from that. Now you're, in a lot of cases, homeless. Yep. You have no income.
Criminal charges.
Yeah. You don't even have your basic needs met. So
right. What do you do?
Set up to fail, right? So I mean, people probably just stay in because they so much fear around.
It's easier, and it's a safety net for a lot of people. I've talked to girls that tried to get out and that said eventually and I know several that went back because they said, at least there, I know that I have somewhere to stay. I know that I have money, I have clothes, I have food. At least I'm safe. At least I'm safe there. And
it's some sort of sense of stability, right? They know what to expect.
Absolutely. And whether that's a bad situation, they know what to expect. They know they have somewhere to lay their head, and the rest of it, they just sort of block out and just deal with, because you have to have your basic needs met. You can't just not.
It's really the same model that almost every abuser uses, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether it's physical, mental, sexual, whatever.
It all goes back to that force, fraud, and coercion.
Yeah. That's crazy. So you go into this house, you get housing first. I love how they call that the housing first model.
They give you a stipend. So I think it was like maybe $50 or $60 a week. So you're literally, a lot of women are coming off the streets. You're going into this house, you go to like a little detox thing, and then you'll go into this house, and what do you do if cigarettes? You'll get food stamps probably, but like cigarettes, or you want to get your nails done, or you need to buy some clothes, or whatever. Like, what do you do? What do we used to do? We used to go back to that situation to get money, or we would, try to manipulate men in other ways while in the program. People that we met, wherever, and to get that money. So they would provide you with that stipend. So that takes that pressure off you, that if you do want to go get a pack of cigarettes or buy a lottery ticket or go get a pop, you don't have to worry about that. So that was another thing that was really important too, which it doesn't seem like a lot, $50 a week, but still, that when you're coming off and you have nothing, that's a lot.
Well, I was also talking to another guest, and these aren't going to come out in the order that I interviewed people, so I'm not going to mention too much.
Yeah.
But something that amazed me in there was that a lot of people who come out of that situation, they remind me of people who come out of like prisoner of war camps. They're very tied emotionally to like an object that wouldn't matter to the rest of the population, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that model is very important, because if you strip everything away, you take away some securities within the system and you totally shake the entire world, right?
Yeah. And that's what and I was really fortunate to be. And so this Thistle Farms is an amazing organization. Once you're there, you're a sister, your sister for life. I graduated in 2009. I still to this day daily talk to people down there, or weekly, and work with them on stuff. But I was so ingrained in that, and you become part of that circle, that now I'm able to take the model that I learned there and bring it into what I'm doing now, which is really is really important to me, to be able to have that experience, not just an experience of, oh, I see what you do, I want to replicate it, but of having lived it, of having been a resident, of having been a graduate, of having been an employee, and been so involved with them. It's sort of like just ingrained in my head. Like I could just spill out like everything about the whole organization. And so I've really taken a housing first model and a Thistle Farms approach into what we're working on now. And I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So they start with housing,
Mhm.
but one thing that you kind of glossed over in there is that they actually take care of needs that in
Oh
most
yeah,
cases aren't met in the situation that you're in. So medical, dental, all those sorts of things.
group
That's
therapy,
another level of care.
mentorship therapy, art therapy. We had a garden. We built this beautiful garden. You had something every day. So there were like, when I was there, it's much larger now, but when I was there were 5 houses and we had one main house, and everybody would go to that main house every day. And we would have, group therapy, individual therapy. We would have, just healing stuff. We would have meditation. We would have prayer circles. We would have just community. Like every Monday we would go at each house, we would alternate. And every Monday, one of the houses would cook dinner for everybody. And so we would just community is so important. We would go to meetings together, with the NA and AA together. We did everything together. Every weekend, people who had kids could have their kids come over. So it's very much with the housing first. It's like when they used to give us a key, and it was like and for many people, it was the first time they ever had a key. And when you go into your room, you go into a brand new comforter, brand new sheets, brand new clothes, brand new hygiene products. They're not getting like donated comforters from, somebody and giving them to you. You're getting brand new stuff. Very much like Room Redux, I think, does for children. It's very much like that. And so to have that, and people just love on you and they do stuff for you, and and they just take an interest in you, and they fill that void in many ways that we were missing, either while we were on the streets, or before we even got on the streets. They really just kind of love bombing you in a different way, but in a good way, in a healthy way.
In a genuine way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So going off from that Room Redux, I've talked to Susie Bieberall, and she said something that really stuck out to me. And, with these children who, go through this trauma, they really pay attention to the ceiling, right? And it stuck with me because whoever thinks about a ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same point in time, there's so many triggers around, right, for trauma, that they pay attention to every minute detail. And it sounds like this treatment center that you went to is exactly like that, right?
Very similar. Yeah, they're very trauma informed. I know some of these kind of can sound like buzzwords we throw around, but they're very, and they've been doing it since 2005. Like they really have set the model for in a lot of situations. Now, does this model work for everybody? No. This is what worked for me. We do have a very high success rate, though. The majority of people that went through the program still work there. There's people that have been there 15, 20, 25 years. that have been, just making candles and sharing about the mission. And we're at Whole Foods and Amazon and, nationwide. And so it's really, so I'm sorry, I was answering your question.
Oh, no, that's great.
I told you I could talk about this stuff for 6 hours, so you got to rein me back in.
No, this is good. I like conversations. I don't like the really cut and paste, question, answer.
Yeah.
Right. See where the story leads us. Right. So you saw this beautiful model that's working.
Mm-hmm.
You found your passion within it. So you worked for this organization for a while. You wanted to expand into something on a bigger scale, right? So what did that look like next?
So I actually went out to there was I spoke a lot. We went all over the country and spoke at workshops and trainings and different things. And this was back in 2008 to 2015. So this was still very, very early in the anti-trafficking movement, where people were still literally like, well, what do you mean by trafficking? Like, they didn't understand. And it was still very much, nobody believed that it was something that we didn't choose. Like I said earlier, people thought it definitely was like a moral deficiency, and then, or we would share our stories, and they would, what we wanted to share, and they would come up to us afterwards and be like, your trauma inspires, you inspire me so much. And I would be like, in my brain, I would be like, my trauma inspired you? Like what about my trauma inspired you? I mean, I know the sentiment, I understand what they meant, but it's like, what about, okay, so it inspired you to do what? To what are you going to do? So I ended up going out to California for about 6 months to help set up a program that modeled Thistle Farms. They wanted to model it. So also that experience of going out there. I went to LA. I'm an East Coast girl. I'm from the mountains. California is lovely. To all you Californians listening, it's just not my thing. I had to come back. So we've set up the program. We got the house open. It was, basically the exact same thing as Thistle Farms. And I moved back to Virginia. And then I started working for just different organizations that are, national leaders in the anti-trafficking movement, doing grant writing, speaking, blog writing. In nonprofits, we wear all the hats. And so, one day I could be writing a blog. The next day I could be speaking in front of Congress or in front of the General Assembly. The next day I could be, with a woman at a hospital who had just got out of a trafficking situation, and she just needed somebody there with her. So it was just various things. And then about with COVID. So when COVID happened, it just, shut everything down. So I started working from home, and I started working for some national organizations, doing some trainings and some workshops. And then about 8 months ago, I was like, I didn't align with some of the stuff that was happening. And I was like, there has to be a better way to do some of this stuff. I felt like that there was some re-exploitation going on by the very organizations that swear that they're not going to exploit us. And I just, so I stepped away, and that's how I just started, God sent me to Memphis. And that's how, and that's what I'm doing, now is working with We Fight Monsters.
I'm going to throw that up here again. So as you know, Ben and I quickly became friends.
He has a habit of that.
He just genuine as the day is long is what I can say.
Absolutely.
About it. How did you get to Memphis? Right. I mean,
right. Well, so first of all, I've never actually been to Memphis, but we're going to be there. Now, we can tell about that at the end, but let's go back. So originally it started when and the two best things that have happened in my life in the last 6 months was because I got into it with somebody on LinkedIn. So I was fussing with somebody on LinkedIn about something, and a gentleman named Dan Stinson, he's out of Virginia. He he's affiliated with Kevin, very dear friends with all the same people. He hopped in and sort of defended me, and I saw he was from Virginia, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in Virginia too. Hey, we quickly became friends. He's very, very dear friend of mine. Love him. And he was sharing all of We Fight Monster stuff and Ben stuff on LinkedIn. So I was not working at the time, and and so I wrote Ben a message, and I was like, "Hey, this is what I do. This is who I am. If you have any gaps in resources, if you need a grant writer, if you need a fundraiser, if you need a survivor, I'm here." And about a week later, I had a We Fight Monsters email, and this is probably about I think it's like June, May or June, and it has just been like hardcore, intense, every day, full-time job, getting Sparrow off the ground and just trying to support him and Jess and what they're doing, because we need them on the ground there physically doing stuff. So I've been trying to do a lot of the stuff in the background that, A, that I've experienced doing, and B, just that, like, I'm so in love with their mission and just them as people, and the people that have the group and the team that we've built, that Ben's built, that Jess has built, the people that they've brought in, and then I told Ben early on, I said, "Hey, I want to do all this for you and I want to work with you, but I need you to just maybe just let me run with stuff. Like I don't want to run everything by you." And he was like, "Girl, if you want to be micromanager in the wrong place," he was like, "just do it." And so he just lets me. So basically, I just call him and tell him when and where to show up, and be like, "Hey, we're doing this," or "Hey, we're partnering with this organization." But he has really given me the freedom and the leeway and the he trusts me, and he trusts what I do, trusts my experience, trusts my as in this work, but also as a survivor. But he also treats me like a professional. He doesn't treat me like, "Oh, you're the token survivor." He treats me like I'm just another member of the team. I'm not there because I'm a survivor. I'm there because I'm good at what I do. And that's what he brings to the table. And he will deny this, but he is very, very much a leader. And Jess is very much like that. The thing that I think pushes him, but also in her own right, she has created, and like they're the two of them together are just like unstoppable. And I don't know if the people listening, if you haven't heard Ben's story, there's a really good podcast Scott Mann does. It's called Rooftop Leadership, and it's him and Ben sitting by a bonfire, and Ben tells his story, and it is powerful. And if you haven't seen it, you should definitely see it. But to hear what him and Justin went through, to hear the struggles they faced, and then to see what they're doing now, there are no words. There are no words. And I want to be there for that. I want to jump. I'm here. Let's do it. Let's go.
So he will be on this podcast later on in this series. And he also tells a story here, but something that I want to just a preview, right? Ben is only 4 years sober, right?
Right. I know. And look. I know. Yeah. He was yesterday was his 4 years. 4 years clean yesterday.
So you look at that, and to be honest with you, 3 years ago, I thought he was a meme, right? Because I always saw this guy holding this sign.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a funny story. Yeah. We're going to be using those signs at the event. So for a few different things. So, but yeah. I didn't even know about them. And like to be in this, they've really, and honestly, because of the baby and because of the mama that we have now, is really the whole reason they were like, boom, jumped into this anti-trafficking stuff. I mean, I know that they've worked previously, but now we're really like stepping into this space, like in a mighty, mighty way. Like, hey, we're here. And I want to take all of my lessons learned, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, from the organizations I've, been a part of, the organizations I've worked with, the organizations I've been a resident of, the organizations that have harmed me and others, the organizations that have been amazing. I want to take all of that, bring all of that to the table, combine that with what Ben and Jess are doing, and I don't see how we can fail.
Oh, agreed. So going back to Ben just for a quick second.
Yeah.
One thing that he mentioned in his story is he fully believes that this mission is ordained by God. And I brought up the 4 year sober thing because how can you not look at that and not believe that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everything that they've done in the 4 years since, right?
It's absolutely, yeah, it's incredible. And that's just not like, and like we're not even talking about like Ukraine and Maui and Pineapple Express and Uvalde and Miami and I mean I don't even know. And they also got 8 kids and they also have a marriage and they also have a business and they've got another nonprofit and they've got
Yep.
how can somebody look at that and think it's not ordained by God? Like how else in the hell is that even possible?
It is absolutely crazy.
Like, and I want to be a part of that. Like I've never worked with an organization or seen an organization that has as much drive and as much like, and they're both people of action. They're not, let's sit around and let's have a board meeting and let's brainstorm and let's do blah, blah, blah. They're like, we're going and we're doing this. And then they're like, Kristen, just do what you want to do. Tell us tell us when to show up. If you want to do this, do it, just do it. And we'll talk about it later. And so like to be able to have like that freedom and let me just remind everybody, we're an all volunteer organization. None of us get paid. None of us. So maybe that'll change in the future, but as of now, so I think that brings another level of integrity, of transparency, of qualifications, like to say that okay, a lot of organizations, like, what is your motive? We just love this work, and people like me and Ben and Jess and Josh, we have been through the fire and we have been through hell, and we have this thing in us that will not allow us to not go back. Like we physically cannot handle injustice. We physically cannot handle seeing somebody getting ready to go through something that we just went through. We literally like, and I'm sure that like I'm sure we will make mistakes. We've made mistakes. We'll probably make more mistakes, but you know what? We're doing something about it. And that's the thing. And that's that's why I'm just so passionate about, like, I'm passionate about this mission anyway, but that's why I'm so passionate about this organization, period.
It is a fantastic organization. I mean, every time that I get involved with one, I get goosebumps, to be honest with you.
We do too. Sometimes we look at it, we're like, well, like we look at, our social media engagement is insane. And then, we've got Ben do a podcast with the CIA, and we've, there's like so much going on, and it's like, there's all these moving parts, and how in the world are we able to juggle all these moving parts? None of us are paid. None of us only one person lives in Memphis. The rest of us are outside of Memphis. A lot of this we do on our phones, but we're getting stuff done. We're helping women save them. I'll never say that we're saving women, because we're helping women to save themselves. Because if
them the resources,
they're not ready, and veterans as well, because if they're not ready, there's nothing we can do for them. We can be there and we can provide a soft place to land, but we cannot do it for them. And if people are willing to meet us halfway and do the hard work, we will do everything that we can every single day as a volunteer to make sure that they don't go through what we went through. And that's, we have a really good group of people right now that, that we're housing, that are doing the work. They're getting clean. They're staying clean. They're working. They're recovering. They're healing. They're doing it. And, we're successful. And I mean, we're fighting the monsters and we're winning.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. So I promise this is going to be my last question. Maybe.
That's okay. Hey, I'm here for it. Let's do it. It's fine.
So we talked beforehand, before we click the record button, that there's a lot of different people and a lot of different organizations fighting it from different angles. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of contentions on the angles that people are fighting it from. What's your viewpoint on all that? I mean, you talked about at the beginning that I believe it was at the beginning that you try and be a bridge builder. So what's that message?
So if you look at it, so if, for those of you who are familiar, with the anti-counter trafficking space, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, I'll just give a little brief. So there's many different models. So there's one model called in demand, where there's people that would say, if we end the demand, if we arrest the buyers, then there will be no need for the supply. Okay. Then there's groups of people that say, wait a minute, if you're busting up, whatever and arresting men, there's going to be women there that are going to get caught up in it too, that may have drugs on them, that may have warrants, that may get charged with prostitution because some law enforcement still does that. There's also maybe women that want to be there and that may just be sex workers. So they need to have that right. So then there's that group. Then there's the law enforcement group that is like, we should just arrest everybody. Most of them, that's starting to change. That's really starting to change. We talked about that earlier too. But that's still, there's a lack of training in a lot of spaces. And then there's the faith-based group that is like, come to our house, go to our church, accept Jesus and we'll help you. Then there's so many different factions. And so I weirdly have either worked for, been in, and friends with, connected with, and really like intensely connected with all of those camps. And so it's my opinion on the whole thing, on the whole trafficking, everything is, while I don't agree with it, for me personally, I believe that it's a personal choice, that if you do choose to be a sex worker and that's like, and you're not being exploited, if that's your thing and you want to do it, that's okay. You should still have access to resources, just like, trafficking victims do. You should not be arrested. You should still be given that dignity to make that choice on your own. However, when you begin to be exploited, and we see that, that's when the community needs to step in. And that's when, we really, because a lot of, I would almost say all, but I will say most, and I'm talking from women, I can't speak, for men or for labor trafficking. Most women that are sex trafficked will not self-identify as being trafficked until they're out of it and receive services and have someone say, look, this is what, and you're like, oh, wow. For a long time, I thought, I put myself in this situation. I got addicted to drugs. I'm here by choice. I could leave at any time. When in reality, I couldn't. But it was like, that was my mindset, was like, oh, I'm here. And that was, the people that were trafficking me did not help. They really, confirmed that in my head that, you want this dope and you want, they very, very much made it, my fault. So it was very ingrained in my head. And so I had to get out of it, literally be pulled out of it, get services, and maybe a couple months later, but like intense therapy, like daily intense therapy, to be like, oh wow, that's, wait a minute, that's so I don't think that and then with law enforcement, I think law enforcement should leave sex workers alone. If they want to provide them access to resources, they should connect them with people that are doing that work, or they need to train people in their departments to be the liaison, or to be like, like first contact. Like if you are law enforcement and you come across a trafficking situation, to be able to be like, hey, we have this person that's dedicated, that's trained in dealing, and let them assess them and go through that process instead of it just being just a cop. A lot of us have law enforcement. Yeah. And then with, and so connecting all of those dots, and then with faith-based, like, thank you for what you do, but you shouldn't require anyone to believe in your religion or whatever to give them services. You don't get to pick and choose who you serve. You don't get to pick and choose trauma. You don't get to pick and choose the situation that you want to serve. So taking all of that, and then taking, and just sort of like connecting all these people, and like I'm doing right now, and the people that are listening, this podcast, you may be in law enforcement, you may be in healthcare, you may be in, you may be for sex workers' rights, you may be for in demand. We all need to work together, because at the end of the day, exploitation is exploitation is exploitation is exploitation, and we're here to end it. And we need to start working together, or it's not going to happen. And we need funding, and we need governments to step up and start funding, because there are private citizens out here working their tails off to take care of a problem they have helped create. So that's my soapbox.
No, in my mind, I'm thinking the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, we need to end demand, but it goes even a step further in the beginning than, arresting the Johns or the sex buyers, right?
Right.
It starts at working with the heart first, right?
And it needs to start with the women. It needs to start with taking care. Like, instead of looking at it like, we're going to bust in there and we're going to arrest these guys that are buying sex, it needs to be like, we're going to go there and offer women resources and a way to get out if they want to, and take care of them first. And then we'll deal with these jerks that are, making it worse.
It almost needs to all be happening at the same time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
but it needs to be
because there's demand. There's people who are in it right now. There's people who, may have been in it, gotten away, and still don't realize it, that need resources out here. I mean, it's a big
massive.
world.
It's massive.
There's no scarcity of where to help, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, that's a lot to unpack and all that, right? I guess before we started talking, I didn't realize there was so much contention in all those groups, right?
Well, and a lot of it too. And I'll say this, and if you're an organization, you're listening, then you just need to listen. A lot of organizations will elevate survivors over other survivors. You'll go to their program and they'll, will you speak? Will you do our keynote? Will you do our gala? Because we need a survivor. Will you be on our board? But then they don't do it for the other survivors, or they'll pay with survivors. I've even been in situations where one survivor, gets paid like $1,500. One survivor got paid $250, and they were doing the exact same job. Like a contract. They need to, organizations really need, if you do not have a survivor on your board that has equal voting rights, if you do not have a survivor employed at your organization, if you do not have a survivor that has a voice in every decision from the top down, from the bottom up, from the inside out, all of that, then you need to really re-examine what you're doing and take a hard look at why are you here? What are your intentions? What are your motives? And how are you going to move forward in the future with survivor inclusion and engagement?
I agree. I got one call out for them Christian groups too. They all need to read Matthew 7:15 through 20, right? Where they talk about they'll know us by our fruits. If you want them to be Christians, show them the love that they deserve, people.
And that's everybody. You don't get to pick and choose, like, the token white girl. You don't get to choose, the token brown and black girl. You don't get to, we have to include transgender people. We have to include, people that, that don't look like you and that don't act like you and that don't believe like you. Those are the people that we need to meet where they're at. And not even where they're at. We need to go where they need us to go. We need to be the hands and the feet. And if we are not, then why are we here?
Right. And you don't have to agree with their philosophies.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you want to help somebody, but like, they don't believe, they don't believe the way you believe, so you're not going to help them. Like that's the direct violation of that book that we read. That's not okay.
Agreed. And this is really a space too that Christians can practice, hating the sin and love the sinner. Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is. If you want to be a good Christian, this is a good place to start, right? Because there's
a lot of people that need a lot of love, and and that's how we're going to move the needle on this. Is we're going to have to, be able to put our. I think I've commented something. There was a video that Scott and Ben did, and it was putting your ego aside to get stuff done, and it was to get out of your own way. Like and that's one of the things that we fight monsters in Flanders Fields, and that is one thing that we're really big on is I didn't do this, you didn't do this, we did this, God did this, and Scott, and I will say this, Scott Mann says something, and it's become my mantra, and I keep yelling about it, but he has this whole thing about how the Green Berets do everything by, with, and through. And I mean, there's no better way to say it. That's how the approach that Ben and Jess and Josh and everybody's taken. That's the approach that I've taken. We've actually been doing that, but I didn't know it until he had put a phrase to it. But it's it's by, with, and through. We're there. We're not there to save you. We're not there to speak for you. We're there to walk beside of you and behind you, right. and to hold your hand. And to push you if you need us to pull you back, whatever it is that you need. But we're not going to be the ones to decide what you need. You have to show us what you need and tell us what you need. And until then, we're just going to be there. And I think that's a beautiful way to approach this, because it's when we come out of this stuff, the emotional trauma is so raw and it's so heartbreaking. and we just, you can't even like a lot, you just can't, you don't even know how to like have a friend or how to let somebody help you. And so we're just, we're just trying to be that, we're just trying to be the hands and the feet. Jesus said, who will go for me? And we said, send me. So we're going.
Well, I think that's a fantastic way to end this, right? Send me. So I hope everybody, here's the passion that Kristen brought today, right? And it inspires you to do something, right? And there's many, many ways to help this. Not everybody can be a frontline fighter because we have jobs, we have families, different things like that. But she mentioned a couple of things that, you can do sitting from your home. You can help write grants. You can help, raise funds. You can get the message out. You can, contribute financially, right? A lot of people think it's all the big donations that really make the world go around, but a lot of times it's the $20 a month.
Yeah, right? You can share our posts, you can, even just little as that, you can do things. And anyone that's watching this, if you feel like that you have a talent or a skill, monetary donations, yes. Do we need money? Yes. That is not the only thing that we need, though. For example, we have a woman now that we got in, that is she in her 60s, and we just found out today that she can't read. So we're getting some people together to go work with her. She's employable, but we got to get her to read. So we're going to work with her, on that. We have, if you mentorship, if you can do something over Zoom, if you do telehealth or healthcare, if you do, financial literacy classes, if you work with veterans, like anybody that wants to, you can reach out to me at Kristen with 2 I's at wefightmonsters.org or find me on LinkedIn. And if you feel like you have a talent or a skill or something that you feel like, and you just want to get involved, at the very end of the day, pray for us. Pray that our team stays safe while they're out there. Pray that, that God works through us. Pray that, we're doing his will. Pray that, the men and women that we're helping, are able to, keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep doing, what they need to do. And just, we need that just as much as we need money. So we really appreciate all the support that everyone's given us. And just, if we keep this momentum up, and we have an event October 21st and 22nd. If you can go to our LinkedIn page and find all out about it, or you can, we've got on Facebook and stuff too. And we'll get it up on the website as well. We just finalized stuff today. So Steve's going to be there. So we're going to have some really exciting, people that, it's going to be a good time. So we're just going to raise some money and fight some monsters.
I think today I heard that there's going to be SEAL Team 6 members.
Yeah. And there's going to be, I think, Delta maybe.
I
want to do like a friendly competition, because this is a 5K. To them, that's nothing, because you hear people talk about the 30 K they had to do with the 50-pound packs. So I'm like, I want a friendly competition between all the branches. I want to see like who wins. Someone even suggested we get them all paintball guns. Nice. It's going to be like a zombie run. So you never know. You never know what's going to happen. But it is going to be a good time. It is going to be a time of community. That's the big thing, is community. If you want to get connected to any of this, we are a community and we're growing, and we would love to, have anybody that wants to come hang out with us. And if at the very least, like I said, just pray for us. And again, reach out to me if you have any questions, or if you feel like you could contribute, financially or with your skills or talent in some way. And we appreciate everyone so much. We appreciate you, Steve, for giving us the opportunity to talk. I could talk for 3 more hours, but I know we both have stuff to do. But we appreciate your time and your compassion, your heart, and your generosity. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in Memphis.
Oh, me as well. Can you make sure that your email that I put up here is spelled correctly?
That's correct.
All right. So everybody, I put Kristen's email here. She is more than happy to help anybody get involved. So get a hold of her, please. It's probably the best contact you can make in this space.
Yeah, because everybody else is especially like with Ben and Jess. Like, if you do contact them, they might email you back. Just if they don't, don't think they're ignoring you. They're literally out there just like, saving the world. And so if you email me, you definitely will get a response.
I don't know what Jess is like, but Ben is technology dumb as well. So, I mean, he's also on the front lines, but he doesn't know how to run his computer. So,
yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, and don't ask him for coffee.
He makes nasty stuff.
No, it's Black Rifle Company, not coffee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when I first met him, Dan, was like, ask him to send you some coffee, and I didn't know, and I was like, can you send me some coffee? And Ben's like, I don't have any coffee, so we had to put not coffee after the Black Rifle.
But it's been around longer, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. Well, Kristen, God bless you. I really appreciate you being on here and sharing your story. But even more so, sharing your amazing experience since and providing all the listeners just avenues to get involved and, things to check out and just bringing some more awareness to the entire situation out there. It's going to take all of us to really get involved.
Collaboration is key. We got to start working together. I mean, like I said, it's getting better, but if we don't, if people don't put their egos down and pick their hearts up, it's not going to happen.
Agreed. So I hope you have a blessed night, and I won't hold you up any longer, but once again, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it so much. Have a good rest of your evening.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the forge, shape your thoughts, quench your brain, then put your new tools to use, adding to your leadership. Tune in next week for more lessons from the forge.